But a couple of stories also in college football from yesterday evening. The Division I Council of College Football, of the NCAA Division I Council, now clearing the way for analysts to be able to be at practice and even on game day as a part of the coaching staff, not just as an analyst or advisor. I reached out to Baylor, and I was told that they are still trying to figure out what this actually means. And in fact, I reached out to Baylor and I said, does this now open the door for Gary Patterson, former TCU coach, to be more involved with practice and also game day? And they say, we're all trying to figure this out, exactly what this means.
Well, if it doesn't, then that's just a huge screw up, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, why have the guy on staff if you can't have him out there instructing kids? I mean, I understand in the old rules why you did that. You don't want to necessarily go spend millions on another assistant coach, but in Dave Aranda's situation, I think the juice is worth the squeeze. If you can get Gary Patterson to have the ability to on-field instruct, and I realize what bizarre world I'm living in right now talking about this, Gary Patterson coaching at Baylor. It's still weird, but how do you not make that happen? That would make little to no sense unless he's like holding out for like a $10 million payday or something, which wouldn't be, something that he would do either. But yeah,
completely agree with you.
Huh?
I completely agree.
Yeah, I mean, that would just be a total miss. So especially with Aranda spread as thin as he might be, with all of his obligations now as head coach, as defensive coordinator, as a linebackers coach, I mean, yeah, that would seem to solve a lot of issues rather than Patterson sitting around this fall on the vacant side of the field or, kind of hovering in the background, watching the field and taking his notes as I saw him doing countless times this spring.
Right.
That's valuable, but if he can coach, you need him to coach.
Yeah, no, he's a championship coach and knows his stuff. Now,
I think this is a very interesting move because what do the Alabamas and the UTs and the FSUs and the whoever's got the big bankrolls of the world, like how many analysts are going to be on staff now that are assistant coaches? I mean, how many former head coaches that were these analysts are now going to be like, actual assistant coaches? And
how much more do they got to pay them?
How much more do you pay them? Like, how does that balance out as far as I don't really care about getting into budgets and things, but yeah, how much are you now suddenly spending and just how big does it get, the whole analyst turned assistant coaching advantage and all of that?
I do think this will shift some things. Like when you get into budgets, like the first place that they're going to come for to share money with players is going to be for coaches anyway.
Yeah.
Like that's the first place they're going.
Yeah.
They're not going to break into their own coffers until they have to. But part of the reason that analysts are a good deal is if you're Butch Jones and you got fired at Cincinnati and you're owed 4 years of a buyout,
right,
then Nick Saban can hire you for $90K a year
or whatever
it is, and you don't care because you're still making head coach money and doing 1/20th of the work. You're just there, in the Coach Saban rehab program, and then when you're all the offsets are there. So now if that's, maybe that's still going to be the case, but
let's see how they. But if there are 15 or 20 analysts, and we know Alabama had a bunch, and then Texas, Florida, all of them do. Ohio State. All of a sudden, when you're going to have the $22 million revenue sharing, and then all of a sudden you got another $4 or $5 million there, I don't think it's going to be that much. You just, again, more money, that it's got to come from somewhere. More money available for most of these schools, but not all of them.
But Paul's right. He's got a good point. Like, I don't know what Gary Patterson's contract is with TCU, or like even if that's still in existence or not. But let's say he had a couple years left on that and he's getting paid $10 million. Like, yeah, Baylor's not going to pay you $10 million or whatever other example you want to use. But I would think you're making enough money to be on the field coaching then in that case. So, like, that's the main thing. But, yeah, I'm sure Ohio State or the usual suspects will – use this in a way that others can't quite use it. But then again, like, what are you going to do? You're going to hire 10 former head coaches? I mean, at some point, like, you don't need that many coaches. So this has been a long time coming. I think this has been bubbling for a while, and I am fascinated to see kind of how various schools out there go to applying this, because I think, a guy here and a guy there can make a world of difference. I think, the Baylor case especially, because Aranda's on a hot seat. Defense is, a big responsibility of his, and here you've got this guy who's could very well help you. Now, at other places, I don't think you necessarily need all of that. You've already got a great defensive coordinator. You've already got a sturdy head coach on a cool seat. But, who's the first to take this? Like, is it Ole Miss? Like, that's what I wonder is who's the first team to, like, take this to, like, the excess that it always gets taken to.
It's a great point. I don't know what analysts get paid, but I'm going to say somewhere probably in that 80, 90,000 range, maybe some a little bit more. But, again, depends on their contract where they were. Bob Shipley, who used to coach at Belton High School, used to coach at a lot of different places around Texas. In high school, became an analyst at UT. And I remember him telling me what it was even like 10 years ago when he started to work for Charlie Strong through the transition of other coaches.
I have one other note on that, though, is that I wonder if this is going to obliterate some potential smaller schools again, where you had I'm a position coach, I'm not going anywhere. And it's now you can come to Texas A&M and be an analyst, or whatever the title is going to be. And if that doesn't pluck away some lower level coaches, because now there's more room on staffs, it's a promotion, so on and so forth.
You're right. It's just it's like a transfer portal now for coaches that might be developed. If a school's a lower level school, whatever that might be called, and then you have an opportunity to make $250,000 somewhere else, but again, you still only have the 10 coaches who can go off campus and recruit. That does not increase. It's just the fact analysts are now available more often to coach at practice and also on game day. But also one other decision was made yesterday by the end, and there were a few others, transfer portal being changed just a little bit. The D1 Council voting to remove cannabinoids from banned drug class for championship and postseason participation in football. Decision not final until meeting concludes today.
Yeah, I think this is probably a little bit over.
Are these gummies or are these like?
I think anything like
any pot,
anything that has cannabis in it. So part of this is, and this is the quietest group. I've always said this about rejoicing. This are the coaches, because they've been fighting a losing battle forever. And I think the biggest example I ever heard was, and it was here where he made the quote, but Charlie Strong was like, "Well, we're not going to have marijuana on the team of the Texas Longhorns." And I was like, all you have to do is yell marijuana in Austin and somebody will just throw you some.
Yeah.
I thought they rallied people at practice. Marijuana! Everybody just came running to break the huddle.
They probably have like really competing, like my weed guy's better than your weed guy. You should go to him. So it's a losing battle. And feel however you want about it, but coaches have been fighting this for a long time, and no one's defeated weed yet. No one's defeated it.
We haven't won the war on drugs yet?
No, and particularly weed. It is.
It used to be, okay, I'm older than you guys by 25 years or so. Mm-hmm. It was once just something, my God. It was what? And it was something going. Now it is like it doesn't even make people blink.
No, and I think a lot of people wouldn't even, because we were just so, especially after Nancy Reagan and all that stuff that my generation, we really grew up with, was just say no and all these things, and how
this is your brain.
Yeah,
this is your brain on drugs.
Yeah, they focused
on.
That was
a great commercial.
Yeah, they focused on weed so much. We were like, there's way worse stuff out there that they need to focus on. And marijuana was scheduled one with all this stuff because Richard Nixon decided that he didn't like it. It was just that. And there was no all the, it didn't matter about research or anything that was going on. Richard Nixon's like, we're going to make it Schedule 1. There's too many hippies that are saying I'm awful, and I'm going to make it Schedule 1 so we can arrest the hippies. And other people, too. So.
I mean, times have changed. I mean, Richard Nixon was in office 50 years ago.
And so,
So times are just different. Fentanyl wasn't a concern back when they were starting the war on drugs. Mm-hmm. It's a much different time period. There's a lot of other things that are far scarier and far more of a concern. So I just think this is the natural progress of kind of how marijuana has been viewed in this country. And look, it's here in Texas, we're not going to have it legalized anytime soon because they don't want us to have any fun here. Can't have Pornhub, can't have, can't gamble, can't, all the stuff that a lot of other states are like free and clear. Like we don't do anything. So, it's a little bit different depending on where you live. But I think this is just logical, guys. Like, what are we talking about?
Yeah.
Athletes have been smoking weed for decades, and if that's the worst that they're doing, I'm not saying there's no negative effects to it, because I think that's a BS argument that there are no negative effects, because I don't think it's the same for everybody, just like anything else. Like alcohol is not the same for everybody. You may deal with it fine. Other people, not so much.
Oh, look, milk.
Yeah, I mean, like, whatever.
Some people can digest milk, others can't.
I think there's been a lot of science done on the topic for the last 5 decades, since we thought it was like the big boogeyman that was going to crater the country, and we've realized like it's way in the back of the line. Not to mean that you don't take it seriously at all, but I just think that we're far enough along that this is not something they need to be all that concerned with. And if an athlete's going to go and smoke a little weed, they don't need to be ineligible or any of that kind of crazy stuff. So, I'm totally on board with this, and I think it's just a logical next step as far as the rules go. Cannabinoids, by the way, and I don't know what the details of this will be, but tinctures, capsules, edibles, creams and lotions, oils, sprays. So I don't know if, it just doesn't matter what you do, but that's all the various forms that you can now take them through. It's not just, lighting up a J or anything like that.
So is CBD under this? Okay, all right. Here's some stuff from the responses in the chat room. Keep chopping. Mary Jane and Unlimited Coaches, some great moves. Ricky Williams would love this decision.
He's now on staff, actually. He's the weed guy on staff.
Lacey, better than painkillers.
Right. Absolutely.
This is Paxton. Smoke the stuff now isn't no 70s pot anymore. And I asked him why, and someone said it's much more harsh.
Well, it can be, yeah. I mean, it's all scientifically engineered by labs that are allowed to do legal business and by people that aren't legal at all. But, yeah, I mean, we're talking 50 years ago. Yeah. Cars are better than they were, or whatever you want to example. Cameras are better than they were 50 years ago. So you're right on that.
You walk into a dispensary in a state where it's legal, and you could be a novice. And I'm not speaking from any direct personal experience here.
Oh, no, we're going there.
Yeah. But in Arizona, Garrett and I walked in, and I'm a novice. Garrett, very proudly, is not.
They said his name like it was Norm on Cheers when he walked in the door.
Garrett, we've been waiting for you to come to Arizona. We've heard rumors.
What's up, homie?
But I walked in, and I'm looking at stuff, and I'm like, I don't really know, what to get here. And then they're like, well, how high do you want to get? Yeah. Do you have a back problem? Do you have this? They're like, oh, you should try this one. What's your favorite flavor? Do you like strawberry kiwi? We've got that. That's kind of how it goes. So it's not like driving up and being like, hey, and then you give a guy cash. It's just,
Roger the Dodger, weed was made illegal by the chemical companies to make paper of trees in the 1930s.
Yeah, it was illegal. It was it was Schedule 1, where it wasn't as much of a penalty by Richard Nixon when he was there. He's the one who hit it the hardest, where it was illegal. Yes, Roger, you're right. It was illegal for a long time, but he made it way more illegal than it was, and raised all the penalties, and has filled up jails with people who don't really need to be there, and a lot of stuff over 50 years.
Yeah, by the way, I'll say my cars example, not the greatest, because people argue cars were better back in the day when they were less electronic. But I will say cameras, that's a good example. Cameras are way better now than they were 50 years ago.
Yeah.
So weeds can be a lot more potent and strong. And look, it's not for everybody, and it's not necessarily good for everybody. People's lives have been destroyed by weed. You have to be cognizant of that. It's led people down. There's people that believe it's a gateway drug. There are other people that don't believe that. So it's in the eye of the beholder. But I don't think that this is a big roadblock for the NCAA to bog down on and be like, no, we can't have our. I mean, I've been around enough to know that it's going on anyways. And I don't know how often they were testing to begin with. And even if they're testing, you mean how many times have we seen people suspended for weed during football seasons here lately? And do you mean to tell me that nobody in the P5 on any team is smoking weed? So if you go this route, I think that's just again the logical route. But yeah, you better hammer the pill taking and a lot of other things, and not just anything goes. No, not that by any means, but cannabinoids I can understand.
All right, so Paul, back in 2000, maybe 10, Baylor was about to play Tech in that rivalry game at the Cotton Bowl that year. And wasn't it the night or two or whatever before?
2 nights before.
Josh Gordon,
who had a lot of problems.
And somebody else who was?
And Willie Jefferson.
One could argue he's a guy whose life has been ruined by weed in some ways,
absolutely.
that he has a real bad addiction to
Yep,
it.
absolutely.
Exactly.
So they were caught. They were passed out in the drive-thru at a Taco Bell.
Yeah, at the Taco Bell drive-thru.
So there was going to be a slap on the wrist, and all of a sudden, Paul was asked about the President Star. Said, "Hey, Paul," and then you were like,
I just told him what was going on.
Well, tell the story, because we're kind of
yeah, you threw him under the bus.
Yeah, so it was they were playing at the Cotton Bowl. Sonky, you had pneumonia. This was when you were hospitalized.
Yep.
So at the time I was part of the Baylor pregame show. And my job was, I was the, here's what's fun going on around in the tailgate area. That was my gig. And so we're at the Cotton Bowl, and I did 2 bits. One was somebody brought me over a deep fried Snickers. And then Judge Starr came over and ate a deep fried Snickers, and I asked him about it. So it was the 2 things. And so,
about what, though?
And I asked him about the deep fried Snickers. And so he gets done, and we're just talking. And it was right after this Taco Bell incident, and they had been suspended for the first
Well, that's what
quarter.
I'm saying. The Taco Bell incident's not just common knowledge for everybody.
So Josh Gordon and Willie Jefferson had gotten baked out of their gourds. They went to Taco Bell. They were in the drive-thru and passed out.
Yes.
And there was a police officer.
In the car in the drive-thru.
There was a police officer there who cited them for the offense.
It's taking forever, dude. What is going on? Dude is passed out.
Yeah, both of them passed out. So it was really strong stuff. And they were suspended for the first quarter of that game against Texas Tech. And Ken Starr was the president of Baylor at the time, and he came to eat his little deep fried Snickers and do the bit about it. And so we get done, and he goes, "Hey, Paul, do you know any information about our 2 erstwhile Taco Bell patrons?" And I said, "Oh, they're suspended for the first quarter. That's the press release we got." And he's like, "Huh? How about that?" And he walked off, and I thought, I didn't really think anything of it. I was like, okay, well, whatever. And then I get to the press box, and immediately it's announced of Josh Gordon and Willie Jefferson have now been suspended for the entire game. And I was like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
And look, I don't care who they're suspended or not.
Tattletale.
But I was like,
narc.
And then people are going, well, what changed from then to now? And I was like, well, I know what changed. I know.
But the point is, if that hadn't become public, though, then what are the odds that those guys are suspended?
Yeah, no, I mean
0.
Yeah, none.
But it was public that it occurred. If I'm correct, I wasn't here then, but that was known that they had been busted. So it wasn't I'm saying, had that not been on local television, would they have been suspended? No. There are issues that come with it, but for the most part, we're foolish to think that this hasn't been a college football mainstay for a while now.
Everything. Look, the NBA was really out in front of this when they finally were like, we've not stopped. All of us are doing it. And the NFL even tried to set up their drug testing where they would be like, hey, Ricky, we will be drug testing you on or before June 10th.
Before noon.
Before noon.
Again, that is June the 10th. You will be tested. Yeah.
So they were hey, and we're just saying that the science says 2 weeks.
Yeah.
If you don't do it for 2 weeks.
I don't know if he could have shut it down for 2 weeks.
2 weeks. So really, if you give it 4 days, you're probably, but 2 weeks. And then there were guys that were like, yeah, I don't care. And so they were just done with that. And so, yeah.
Well, there you go. And so there's the story why and the ruling of the NCAA Division I Council about cannabis and stuff that are included into what it might be from gummies. I've said this before, and the CBD product, Vita Dreams from Don Humidor, had somebody reach out to me about where I get that. So it's a different animal now than it ever was for the longest of time.
Yeah, you didn't have CBD stores in every strip mall in America
Gas
10 years ago,
stations
20 years ago, much less, in the 70s. So, yeah, it's just a different time, and I think this is just adjusting to the times.